Started. My name is Thomas Harris. I'm from Richmond, Virginia, here in the local area. And we'll be giving away a couple gifts tonight in this webinar. We'll be giving away a $25 Green Top gift card. That's going to be a gift card that Green Top gave me, and I will pick one lucky, attendance to give that gift card. And we will be also giving away a Hog Farmer A-Rig. We'll be given a Navionics Apples away too, so there will be 3 good prizes that will be given away. And let me just make sure everything's coming all right. Alrighty, so go ahead and get started. So a lot of my experience I've had jerkbait fishing have came from fishing Lake Erie during the wintertime. Something I've done a lot up there, and it's made me a better fisherman, and I can take the techniques I've learned up there and take it and apply that anywhere else in Virginia. And we're going to go over certain color sizes, some techniques I like to go over too, and as well as with A-rig fishing too. So as far as rod and reel setups, choosing the right jerkbait for the condition, that's the biggest thing. I'll have 3 jerkbaits on deck, and normally they're going to be a deep diving, like a Megabass Vision 110. It will have, then I'll have a Megabass Vision 110 +1, which is a little bit deeper. And then I want to go with a shallower one, or a little bit smaller one. One of my favorite ones is a 78 Double D. It's a little bit smaller profile. You get around that, smaller bait too. That kind of helps things too, having that smaller profile. And some of the, we'll go over the equipment you use: rod, reel, setup, baits, weights, stuff like that, terrain, what you need to look for. That's another big thing too. And we'll go over any type of questions and answers you might have. Alrighty. So one thing is knowing what type of bait is in your area. You want to kind of match your bait to what the bait fish are in the area, the size, the length, the color, the water temperature. Everything comes into play when trying to catch a suspended fish. A lot of times people say a suspended fish can be the hardest fish to catch, and you just have to have the right tools for that situation. Big thing is knowing where your bait is in the water column. I see a lot of guys out there cast a rod tip, they cast a bait out there and they do these long sweeping motions. And a lot of times when you're doing that, you're pulling the bait versus twitching the bait. You're taking that rod and you're going from, 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock, just doing a hard sweep, and you're taking the bait out of the strike zone. And it, really doesn't look as natural as, you taking your rod tip and moving it, 6 to 10 inches. That makes that bait stay in that location, but gives it more erratic reaction. And that's a key too, is having that erratic reaction over top of that break. That fish is typically going to be on the first or second break. You got to make sure your jerk bait's over top of that location at that time. So you kind of have to visually see where that break is and know where your bait is to let it suspend. You don't want to let it suspend, 5 feet, before the break, or 5 feet after the break. You can already miss that strike zone. So, having your bait over top of that break at the right time will help you catch more fish. And one, we'll get into as far as locations, stuff like that, depths. And I mean, that's been something that's been challenging for me for this year, because this has been such a mild winter. Pretty much anywhere in the United States, everybody has faced a very mild winter. And one thing, I'm normally key on, like, good sharp first breaks, that goes from 8 to 12, or, really steep banks. where it allows a fish to suspend at. But this year they haven't been relating to that. And I look back in my notes where we were catching fish in a certain tournament during the wintertime. And I started noticing the locations where we're catching them. And I just went on the Navionics app and I was studying the locations. And it had something very interesting about the locations. The spots we were catching fish off of wasn't around a steep drop. It wasn't that good hard, first break like I talked about. It was more so a gradual bank. There was more so like, there was one shallower break up closer to the bank, but the rest of it was, just more so a flat bottom. Then I started thinking, why are those fish there? And then I finally came up with a conclusion. Well, a shallower water with such this mild winter, it would warm up faster. So those fish weren't really suspending all that great on the first drop off. They were just suspending over these, shallower flats because shallower water is going to warm up faster versus, a drop off, the top layer closer to the break will warm up, but after that, the rest of it's not going to warm up. So the fish were relating to that style of contours, which in about probably 6 years, that was kind of the first time I realized what those fish were doing. Then we could take that, and I was just studying the Navionics and running that pattern throughout the lake. But one thing I was noticing too this year was the pause. The pause was the biggest thing to jerkbait fishing. There were times we were catching them on a 15 to 20-second pause. I mean, it was absolutely painful. When fishing a jerkbait, I normally start at about a 4-second pause. I go to 4 to 8. If I don't catch anything from 4 to 8, then I go, I'll go even from 10 to 15 or 15 to 20 just to find when I need to, how long you have to let that thing pause for. And that's probably the most challenging thing to a jerkbait is working it too fast. A lot of people like just pick it up, throw it out there, twitch, 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 and let it pause. Knowing where your bait is in that water column, letting it sit there and just have confidence is the biggest thing. Is having confidence in yourself and your spot you're fishing to let your bait just stay there and not move. And I mean, it takes a lot of patience, right? When you go to put your hand on the reel, you got to say no and back down off of it, and just leave your bait there and let it do its thing. The thing with fishing a jerkbait, you got to think you're fishing in clear water, a decent amount of time. So you're throwing out there, you're twitch, twitch, twitch. I mean, that bait is, it's knocking around like that in the water. Well, the fish can hear that from a long distance. They can hear it, see it. So you imagine your bait just sitting there, and it's made that that noise and stopped. The fish are making its way too. So there might not be a torpedo coming out towards the bait, but they're slowly making their way to it. And leaving it there the longer kind of keeps them interested. And you felt it before. If you've thrown a jerkbait a decent amount of time, you'll feel them push water on it. And what those fish are actually doing is they're making their way to that bait. And it's just why it's just sitting there like for a long pause. They're just sitting right back behind it, just looking at it. And then the second it makes the next move, they get it. And I mean, that's a big thing with that policy, especially if it's tough conditions and, you're not catching any fish on a fast pause, is just letting it sit there. Because you got to think if those fish are not aggressive, they're just going to ease their way to that bait. But, leaving it in that strike zone for, that amount of time gives the fish to come to it. It's calling the fish to the bait. And, having patience is the key. And confidence is the key, and we'll get into as far as the colors, stuff like that. You want to go with your always. I'm a big fan of a natural color, especially on a cloudy day. I want to go with more so a transparent color, something that the fish can kind of see through, especially in clear water. I like a clear belly. A lot of my baits, I'll take it and just kind of sand them down a little bit to get that belly a little bit more natural. And then towards the tail, I like a little bit of a purple or orange tail. And I normally throw the Megabass Vision 110 plus one, which is the deeper model. And they have some very good colors in that too. Sunny days, of course, you want to go with a brighter bait, something that's reflecting. That way, it kind of shines, and the fish start making its way to it. Versus cloudy day, like I said, something more translucent, like a Pro Blue by Megabass is very good. It's a very clear bait. Probably one of the most popular colors I've ever seen. Majority of people fish a Pro Blue or have a Pro Blue, and there's a reason it works. So move on to next. So certain jerk baits I throw, I change my rods. If I'm throwing a deep diving or a big jerk bait, I like to go with a little bit heavier of a rod. I'll use the Cassin jerkbait rod, made in U.S. down in North Carolina. Very good rods. They make a 6'9" medium jerkbait topwater rod. Works really good for poppers during summertime, jerkbaits during the wintertime. Then I switched a lot of my rods to it's their Cassin CRT model. It goes for about I believe 119, 3-year warranty, very good rods, carbon fiber handle, allow more sensitivity to travel through the rods. But they have the bigger guides, though. That's one thing I like, especially fishing during the wintertime, is I don't like my guides freezing up. So that's why I go with the CRT, just a little bit bigger guides to them. But it has a really good parabolic bend to the rod. That's the one thing I like. I like a whipping stick. That's just me. I want a very light action rod to absorb the energy on a cast, but a hook set is the big thing. When you're fishing, megabass or whatnot, the hooks are a very light wire hook. So what happens when you're fishing a heavier rod, you have a fish hit it, you come back, set the hook. If your drag's too loose or too heavy, a lot of times it'll pull those hooks out of their mouth, and that's a big thing. I've been through many tournaments where I've lost some big fish fishing a heavier action rod, and the hooks just ripping out their mouth. Especially you get them up to the boat, bam, they start to go the opposite way, and sometimes there's nothing you can do but seem like a softer rod just lets them hold on to the bait a little bit longer and keeps them pegged. Very good rod. You can find those at Green Top Sporting Goods. Gear ratio, you can go 6-3, 6-3 or 7-3. I like a Daiwa Zillion reel. Very good reels, or Tatula reels. I think the TWS wing system on those reels really make a difference casting into the wind. It helps casting control, especially on the Zillions. They have a certain part in the reel where it, whenever you apply pressure to the spool, it's a brake that applies to it. And it just helps, casting in the wind. And the Megabass is probably the best casting jerkbait. They have a chamber system in them, which is a weight for transfer system, which they use tungsten ball bearings, which allows that bait to cast really good, into the wind. Line wise, 8 or 10 pound Berkeley, 100% fluorocarbon. That's my go-to line. I normally throw 10 on just about everything. 8 pound, I'll go if it's very clear, very tough conditions. I'll scale down to a 8, but across the board, it's 10 pound. Electronics wise, I like to run a Lowrance HDS Gen 3 unit, and I'll use my electronics to go through an area. I look for wind. It's a big thing. I look for wind, but I'm looking for bait in that water column. That's going to tell me where I need a target. Whenever I see the bait, if I see it in 10 foot, I know where I need that jerk bait to be. If I see bait in 15, 20 foot, I know I need to let that thing count or go to a very deep dive and jerk bait. If I see bait on the bottom, I know I better put it on the trailer because it's going to be a tough day. And a lot of times when I see that bait on the bottom, it is not a jerk bait day. I got to pick up a jig or silver buddy, something to keep that bait on the bottom. But using your electronics will help you determine where that bait needs to be in the water column, just to let it suspend. You get to a point and you see bait in 10 foot and the wind's on it. Well, I mean, if there's a fish around there, it's going to be in that area. So that will help you navigate, certain areas, especially using your navionics too, of course. You can kind of tune into high percentage areas. That's one thing I found about studying my navionics is I can find high percentage areas very, very quick. I can see how I'm catching the fish. I can take that and I can hit the most predominant areas in the lake in 30 minutes, and that makes a big difference. Is studying your navionics, knowing where's what, and when you're faced with a situation where you have to go to be able to catch a fish like that. So I just got a couple quick questions. Some of the tips I'm going with. I mean, this webinar is from guys from all over, all over the United States, and the tips I'm giving here can work in Georgia too. This is one guy I got a response. He's living in Georgia. He fishes 4 to 8 feet. Mostly around docks. Typically a little stained, not really clear. So I mean that's a good question. 4 to 8 feet. You want to go with a shallower jerkbait. I mean, big thing is water temperature too. You gotta focus on what type of water temperature you have. If it's 60 degrees, maybe your jerkbait's not going to be the most predominant method you have, but it will still catch fish behind other people. I've caught a lot of fish on a jerkbait in front of docks, next to docks. With stained water, I want something that reflects a little bit. Megabass makes a GG thread fin, which is more so a blue color, works very, very good. 54 degrees, you can still catch fish on that. It's coming from Kenny from Georgia. The pause is going to be the biggest thing. Your pause is not going to be a 15-second pause like we have in Virginia when it's 44 degree water temperature. You're probably looking at a 2 to 8 second pause. A lot of times I find it being very helpful around docks or stumps, with that combination, just letting it sit there. I would, do parallel in front of the dock, cast it down, let it suspend, cast down the sides of it, and that seems to work very, very good. Another question coming in from Patrick is, what power of the rod am I using? So this is a 7-foot moderate fast medium. It's actually a crankbait blank. So that's kind of the blank I like to use, is a very soft blank with a lot of flex to it. It is the rod size. This goes from 6 to 14, 3/16 to a half ounce. All Megabass Vision 110s or plus ones or a half ounce. So you can go up to that rating. So this CRT rod, this is a TC, T as in Thomas, C as in Cashin, 8437. That is the model number I like to use for all my jerkbaits. Like I said, that's a 7-foot rod right there. Very good action. Casting 78 double Ds, pretty much all the brands. Another question. Well, I'll just answer a couple questions while I have the screen up. Do I ever use braid in a fluorocarbon leader? No. That's the only time I'll do straight braid or straight fluoro, but I don't like to do both, especially jerkbait fishing. I mean, you're fishing with $24 crankbaits and I mean jerkbaits, and I just don't like the connecting knot. I'm casting out there, I'm twitch, and I'm just afraid when a fish hits it, I'll come back too hard and break the knot. One thing with braid, there is no stretch. Fishing these light wire hooks, I like a little bit of stretch, and I'll have that with a fluorocarbon. Also, braid floats. I don't want my jerkbait to have any potential at rising, even though you might have a leader on there. I don't want my jerkbait to start rising. If I want anything, I want that line to sink, and I'll just kind of ramble for a couple minutes. A lot of times, if I want a jerkbait to go down a little bit, I want to upgrade the split ring. So I want to go, to the next size split ring and maybe go to the next size hook. A lot of times when you do that, that will get that bait slowly sinking down. And that's what I found a lot of times is, not something that just suspends there and maybe moves up a little bit. If anything, if I want that bait to sit there, I want that bait to slowly start sinking. I mean, not at a fast rate, but just a very gradual, slow fall to it. And a lot of times that makes a big difference. But back to your question, Rich. It's not something I recommend. I would just go all braid. I mean, all fluorocarbon, and don't worry about the braid because of the clarity. There's no stretch, and just go into a line-to-line knot. So another question we got in, is there a water temperature range that works best for you? Yes, you nailed it, Mike Baldwin. 40 to 50 seems to be the magic number. That's, to me, it's where a jerkbait bite happens, is typically below 50 degrees. I've caught them in, colder than that, than 40, but I like 43 is when they start, seem like it's on like Donkey Kong with a jerkbait versus, Alabama rig. Sometimes that 45-degree mark, you still get the bites, but you don't have, the number of fish you'll catch on a jerkbait. But it seems like they suspend better at that water temperature. Alrighty. So I just have one screen up right now. So I have another question. As far as my jerkbaits go, I typically like it to suspend even or nose down. When I want that bait nose down, if I'm letting it suspend, and with, certain manufacturers, their baits suspend a certain type of way. If it's suspended nose down, while it's sitting there, the next twitch I'll have will get that bait even deeper. And I do like that, though. I want that bait to get a little bit deeper than, your average bear. I've seen guys put weights around it, and they will actually drop their jerkbaits will actually go tail down, and when they jerk it up, they bring it up through the water column. I haven't tried that yet. It's not something I have too much confidence going in, but might need to look into it. But I like it to sit a little bit nose down. I might go to just a tad bit bigger split ring up front to get that nose down just a little bit more. But that's a good question. All right. I want to send out a chat real quick. I just want to see if y'all is there a camera on me? I'm not seeing the light on my computer. You might be no camera. I know you might be able to see my screen, but might not be able to see me. All right. All right. Just a screen. I do have to figure out how to get it back off screen. We'll keep knocking through here. So one thing too, while fishing, some of the jerk baits, you want to look for you want to kind of do a examine over your jerk baits. I do this before I use it. I make sure there's no cracks. One thing, I check all the hooks every time I use them. I just take the hooks, run them over my fingernail, and if they stick, they're sharp. But if the second they start sliding down my fingernail, it's time to sharpen them up. That's one thing I like to do is I don't like to leave a fish on a dull hook. It just don't have too much confidence, especially on these mega basses are very light wire hook. Keeping them sharp will of course keep the fish on there and not come off. I got one in my hand right now. That's a mega bass +1 in the M shad color, and hook's a little dull, so they come with reverse barbs. I get a question a lot, where can you get extra hooks at? You can get them at the hookup tackle. They sell the mud on the Megabass hooks, which you can replace them. So keeping them sharp and ready to go will keep more fish on your hook. Now one thing I'll do too, I'll go to a bigger jerkbait like a dual realis or a pointer 100, some big profile jerkbait, or a Smithwick 100 or Perfect 10 Rogue, big body jerkbait. When it's windy, it's howling, I find the fish to be feeding higher up because the bait's higher up. So, a lot of times when it's calm, the bait's down deeper. I go with a smaller presentation, a deeper jerkbait to get down to those fish. But when it's windier, the fish are higher up in the water column. They need something they can see. I mean, imagine, trying to see a little 14-foot Carolina skiff out in the middle of the ocean in a hurricane. You can't see it, and that's how I look at it versus, you can see a cruise ship in the middle of a hurricane because it's a bigger profile. That's the kind of view I take into jerkbait fishing. If it's really windy, I need something that fish can see. And I'll go to a big jerkbait, something shine bright, something to catch their attention. And a lot of times that works where, I'll see other guys selling the same stuff. I mean, I'll go to a big jerkbait. I am not afraid to throw something that's supposed to be in a saltwater section and throwing it over for bass. I want a big profile, something loud with a lot of knock, a lot of shine to it. And a lot of times that puts some more fish in the boat for me, as thinking outside the box. A couple of things you want to think about is your location where you're planning on fishing. I like to find, typically when you're catching a jerkbait fish, it's suspended, of course, but it's up looking for food. You want to look at main lake points, channel bends, somewhere where that fish can get to the kitchen. But after it's done in the kitchen, it can go to the sofa. You want to find those quick moves those fish can make. They can suspend, they can be up there eating bait, but after they're done eating bait, where can they go? And it's just figuring all of that out is the biggest puzzle. Just figuring out where all that, where those fish are traveling to and whatnot. Let's see. Let me go back. Alrighty. Crap. Alright, so this is two of my favorite colors, 78 double Ds, right here. This is a, I believe what do they call that? Gunmetal shad is on the top. That's this one right here. As you can see, it has some marks to it. And I replaced that with the bigger hooks on them. As you can see there, I put a number 2 Megabass hook on it. That way it kind of gets that bait down, and same with this one. I went to the bigger one up front. Now this color up top, I like to throw that when it's cloudy or when it's a little bit darker water. I do very well with smallmouth on this color. It has a chartreuse belly right here. You probably can't see it that well in this image, but that chartreuse undertone works very good in the spring. That's another thing I kind of want to get sidetracked is, a chartreuse belly seems like really does well in the springtime for some reason. Don't know why. It might be something with a bluegill going on. It seems like chartreuse is a key during the pre-spawn. Getting into March, early April, chartreuse is something you want to apply on your jerkbait. You can use Sharpies or fingernail polish. This bottom jerkbait right here, that's my go-to on calm calm, cloudy days. Seems like it does very well. Very flat image. That's called Shiner by Lucky Craft. Another thing I like to pay attention to is the eyes. I like, a big eye like that kind of relates to that bait fish. That does very well. All right. This is my big profile stuff. So this is this is a dual Realis up top, you see, and down below is a Rogue Perfect 10. That goes, as you can see, I had a pretty good one on that one right there. Straighten that bottom hook out. I got it in though, but it was a big fish though. It was a very big fish. It was about 5.5, 6 pounds on that one right there. But I go to these, bigger profiles when it's, the wind is rocking. I like to go with, I'll go with, that bottom one when it's cloudy. I go to the top one when it's sunny. And that seems to make a difference. As you can see, that orange belly too. It really highlights on a sunny day. Gets those fish active coming towards that bait. This is a Megabass Vision 110. Hold on one second. I'm having a little trouble with my camera. I'm trying to figure out how to fix my camera. So with this Megabass Vision 110, this will go a little bit deeper. This is going to do about 10 feet. And that's with 10-pound test on a pretty, long cast. As you can see, it has a lot of scratches from the hooks and stuff like that on it. So that's to me a sunny day bait. That's when I go. That's my go-to right there on a sunny day. Fish really like that bait. Really good shine to it. That's what I like about it. The hooks on that one right now, that's the one I have right next to me, and it is a little bit dull. Probably need to sharpen those up. But that's my go-to sunny day bait. And then that is a picture of my reel right there. That's that Zillion TWS right there. And we kind of, because this is going to be on A-rigs too, on A-rig fishing, we'll kind of speed through just the last part of this. And then we'll start, get into some of the A-rig stuff. So this is a couple key locations. The wind is your friend. That first and second break is going to be the key. I had one tournament this year where the fish weren't relating to that first break. They were actually pulled out to the second break. And that's when we had to get the boat further off the bank and let it suspend out there and just let it set and let it set. And that really made a difference, just paying attention to where the bait was, but knowing where your jerk bait was at the water column. And we actually started using our navionics to kind of find those areas with that good second break to them, and running around and hitting those high percentage areas. Alrighty. Ooh. Alrighty. Oh crap! I hit the wrong button. Oh crap! All right. All right. Hold on one second. I think I just hit the wrong button. I apologize. All righty. Hold on one second, guys. I apologize. Lost my direction on my webinar. Hold on. Crap. stuff hides from me on here. Alrighty. All right. And all right, I think we're back to going up strong, I guess. So next thing we'll get into is A-rig fishing. One of my favorite A-rigs is the Hog Farmer A-rig. I find that's the heaviest wire A-rig. It is a very strong A-rig. You know, I find myself not having to bend the A-rig arms out as much versus, you know, like a was it the Yum or Picasso, stuff like that. It seems like I had to constantly be bending the arms out. And with this Hog Farmer, one of my favorites is a 5-arm 8-blade A-rig. It's a very big profile. Some people say it's a little too big, but with that A-rig, it probably weighs closer to 2 ounces, I want to say. You know, with everything on it. And with that A-rig, you know, it has a lot of shine too, and that's one thing I like. It's, you know, something that kind of reflects. You know, when you're fishing that deeper water or whatnot, it, you know, kind of shines, get those fish attracted to it. It seems like, you know, when the A-rig first came out, you know, you had to have a rig that you know, was no blades on it. It became more and more popular. You know, they started making tandem A rigs and whatnot on them. But I find that Hog Farmer, it's great components, you know, 100-pound snap swivels. And I've never had one break on me, knock on wood, never had an arm gotten pulled off or anything like that. So I have an A-rig. You know, I normally this time of year is A-rig or a jerkbait are my go-to baits. You know, with the A-rig, you know, I run five jig heads. I run 4 1/8-ounce jig heads on the outside, and in the middle I do a quarter or 3/8-ounce jig head. My outside ones are a little bit lighter. You know, of course, so that middle one kind of sits a little bit different. And also what I'll do too is I'll fish and y'all might not be able to see me as well because I don't have a slideshow put together on this one at the moment. But with that A-rig, the center one, I go with the bigger one, of course. I do like a 4.5 or 5-inch swim bait. I'll always do a different color than the one in the middle. So on the outside, I'll do I like the Castaix 3.5, their little swim bait. And in the middle, I'll go with the big Kayatek 4.8, put a chartreuse tail on it. It's ready to rock and roll. Does a very good job. You know, good action to the outside swim baits. They run true. I find with those Kayatex, they don't tear up as easy. The Castaix, they don't tear up as easily, and that makes a difference too. It's having, you know, a good A-rig with you that won't tear up. Hold on. And one thing I found too with fishing that A-rig is changing your location of where that bait's swimming. So I throw my A-rig out there, I'm reeling it back, and I'm changing the direction. I'm going left and right, back and forth. And that way it kind of gives it more a natural swim, you know, versus just reeling it straight to the boat, of course. You know, A-rig fishing, you want, you know, a lot of bait close by. That makes it a little bit better. So, you know, bait is a very key feature to it. Water temp wise, you can fish A-rig to 43 degrees. Seems to be the magic numbers, you know, 50 especially, 55. I've caught fish in 75-degree water all on an A-rig. And just finding out where the bait is a big thing, of course, like anything else, knowing where the bait is and getting your Alabama rig down there and just count it down. Typically what I do is measure the distance from the A-rig to or the bottom of my fishing rod. I line up with the A-rig, I drop it in the water, I count it down. That way I know how long I need to let that bait sink to get it down in that strike zone. So I'll cast it out there. I count down to I feel it hit the bottom, and I just slowly start reeling it in. I use 50-pound braid, 5-to-4 gear ratio reel. That way that bait stays in that water column. One thing I find with fishing, A-rig is, I've seen guys move it way too fast, and you're taking that bait out of the strike zone. That's one thing you don't want to do. You want to leave it in the strike zone. A slower gear ratio will, do that. So 5-to-4, 50-pound braid works very good. Works good around bridge abutments. As many people know, I like to throw it around docks too. That does very, very well thrown on the edges of docks, bringing it back. That fish seem to just come out and eat that thing up, especially if there's wind coming towards it. Another thing I'll do too is I'll downsize my A-rig in the springtime. I'll go to a smaller A-rig in like a 5-arm, 4-blade when it's a little bit tougher conditions. Maybe the bait's a different size. I'll downsize my A-rig, and that will make a difference too. Also, I've found before in certain types of conditions when it's like no wind, super clear water, like can almost be impossible to get a bit on something so big and bulky. I go to a smaller A-rig, sometimes without blades, and that will help too. Once the wind starts picking up, of course, I go to a pretty big A-rig. Like I said, I throw that 5-arm, 8-blade hog farmer, and then I pretty much throw everything that he offers as far as the mini compact rig. Works very well. It's just a company I really believe in. I mean, it's not something that I get free for doing this. It's just something I've fished A-rig so much. It's my go-to bait. I'm an A-rig junkie, and it's the first A-rig that that I've had to hold up through all the tests. So. And it is a little bit more pricey with the A-rig, but it's still a very good A-rig. One of the questions I just had come in is, would I throw A-rig one going down a bank? Absolutely. Let's say you'll pick up a spinnerbait. Well, I'm going to pick up an A-rig. It might not be a huge A-rig. It might just be a smaller one. But I'll go with a smaller A-rig where you will throw a spinnerbait at. Just something a little bit different. I mean, it's, I look at it as, it's more opportunity for a fish to get a bite. You go into a bar, you see one lady, you might have only one chance, but you go back into the bar, there's 5 ladies there. You got a better chance of, something happening. So, that's how that's kind of a bad example, but, you have more opportunities with more baits, more blades. It's more of it might not look natural to the fish, but, a fish that will eat a spinnerbait will eat an A-rig and vice versa. The lengths on that A-rig, what are they? I think they're about 10 and a half. They're probably 8 inches, I want to say. And, they got many different styles. Of course, I said always put that bigger one in the middle. And a lot of times with that A-rig too, trigger those fish, I'll speed it up real quick and slow, start slowing it down. They thump it right then and there. Let's see. Do you like to bend the arms out, weigh in, or keep them tight together? The way I have mine, I kind of bend them out a little bit. I don't like them too tight together because it seems like a certain cast you make, the A-rigs will get stuck together. Or the arms get stuck together, excuse me. So I kind of fan them out, for kind of far apart where, if I could do an overhand cast for some reason, they don't get tangled up. That's one thing. Your cast makes everything. I typically do like a sidearm, throw with it. That way it seems like it doesn't get hung up. I also do a snap on the front of my A-rig. When you're looking at an A-rig too, you always want one with a swiveling eye on it. That way when that bait's coming through the water column, it could rotate, but it keeps it level in the water column without twisting, giving you line twist. But I just put like a big snap on there. That way I can take it off, put it away, put it back on without having to worry about it catching every rod on the deck of the boat. Which one of the arms do you normally catch fish on? That is, it's kind of hard to tell sometimes because they might be going for one and they get three others to the face. But I have found my bigger fish come on the middle arm. With that middle arm, of course, I do a bigger bait, brighter color, something completely different than the outside ones. And normally my fish come on that center arm. I would say it's probably 50% there, of course, on the center one versus the outside ones. That's normally my go-to is the center one. Alrighty. Fishing, so color as far as swim baits go, color came in, what color I would use for a little bit stained lake. I throw the IU and the blue gizzard anywhere I go. The IU is a little bit more of a yellowish back, and that does very well. But that blue gizzard has more of that darker blue back and works very well. It's probably the toughest swim bait I've used, to be honest with you. I mean, the Kayatex are probably the best action, but these Castaics are very tough, and I like them during the wintertime because it's more so a tighter action. That's one thing too, a tighter action swim bait, it represents the bait fish during that time of year. Fishing during, the wintertime, like we are right now, the water temperature is colder, the fish are less active, their bait doesn't move as much and is erratic, so they have a tighter wobble to them. It's like a crankbait. You throw a crankbait, you throw shad wraps, of course, this time of year because it's a tighter action. Well, you take that and apply it to Alabama rigs or swim baits, and you have the same outcome. Tighter action swim bait in colder water. And with those Castaics, you have that option. And then I did say I put a middle one as a Kayatek, a little bit bigger action, kind of gets their attention. And I think it's the whole combination of that, works into play with each other. And then that center one, I'll do a chartreuse one, chartreuse tail on it, makes it really bright, stands out. And one thing I'll do too, I don't know how many of y'all are fishing up north, but what I'll do is if you're fishing Alabama rig up north for smallmouth, this is extremely important. You take one thing from me, this webinar is if you're up north fishing for smallmouth and you're in a tournament where they have a certain requirement as far as, hooks go, like a 3-hook or, a 2-hook, always put your hook baits at the bottom, especially for smallmouth. Always have your hooks at the bottom of the A-rig, and then up top, your 2 up top, do your dummies, and then the one in the middle, do the one with the hook too. That way, a lot of times smallmouth a lot of these fish too come up underneath it. I mean, I found smallmouth, they're coming out of the depths of the abyss, and they're coming up underneath this A-rig. So having the hooks on the bottom will help your hookup ratio versus the one up top. It's a little bit more tangled to get them up there. And then what I'll do to them, certain A-rigs will do this, but you'll have 2 long ones on the bottom, and then you'll have a shorter 2 arms up top. And that's a good method to do. If you make your own, you can kind of trim them, or you can possibly do these 2, trim them, make them a little bit shorter arms up top. Alrighty, another question coming in. Do you change your A-rig setup depending on the season or weather? Bigger baits during the summer. What's the coldest temp you would go for a rig? Also, when you single swim bait versus a rig. Okay. So I would do a rig. It's believe it or not, it's best all year round. I mean, I think it's overly in lakes. Let me say that rivers, it's optional. I think once it gets too warm in the rivers, that bite's going out. But I kid you not, I throw it all year round. Especially fishing lakes in Virginia. There's a lot of bluebacks. And if I get into a lake with a lot of bluebacks, I go with a rig, and because the fish are roaming around chasing freaking bait. One thing I learned when I went to Chickamauga one year in March, those guys catch a lot of big bags throwing an a rig in a brush pile. Um, I exposed all my hooks on my a rig, but I got a brush pile set up, which is just a 3-arm a rig. A blade on each arm, but I Texas rig them, and I literally throw them in a brush pile and reel them through. And I will catch fish that way in lakes. A lot of people don't do that. They'll throw a worm or a jig on there, but you throw a rig in there and creep it through there, they'll bite it. And there's really, if the fish is biting a crankbait or a spinnerbait, it's always going to bite it. There's always active fish to bite a rig, no matter where you're at. Like I said, it works a little better on lakes. Excuse me. As far as the temperature goes, the coldest temperature I've caught fish on a rig was 41 degrees, and we had about 23 pounds on that. That's how cold it was. The water temperature was 41 degrees. My partner he had 2 over 5 on it at the same time. So that shows you, there's always active fish somewhere to bite. This is also a good question. Also, when do you choose a single swim bait versus an a rig? If you're fishing the a rig, I fish mine in the water column. Look for where the bait is. I count it down to that depth and reel it through. I think a rig will be better in that situation versus on the bottom. Typically, if I'm trying to catch a fish on the bottom on a swim bait, I want to go to a fish head spin. If it's a tougher condition, a fish head spin like Casey Ashley was throwing is very good. I think that's better off for you. We had a tournament the end of January where I caught 2 fish on a rig that day. Biggest one was about 3.5 pounds, but I had 2 about 3.5. But my biggest fish was a 6.5 and came on a single swim bait, came on a fish head spin at the bottom. I wouldn't have probably caught that fish on a rig. Certain types of conditions, they want that bait on the bottom, barely moving, very tight action to it. And I think, that single swim bait was definitely the choice of that day for that size of fish. What hooks do I use when I Texas rig? I'll do 2 different ones. I'll do Shane Bait Company, I believe. They make A rigs too, pretty good A rigs, a little bit lighter wire. But he makes a weedless head. It's kind of like a shaky head style. I'll do that, or I do a VMC swim bait hook, very good hook. I like how the weight is on the shaft of the hook, and I'll do that if I Texas rig. Let's see. What else do we have? I use fun and prefer a single swim bait or a rig. I would start out throwing an a rig, Ben. I think it's not going to hurt. That single swim bait, it's just like I go back to your opportunity walking in a place and seeing 1 chick versus 5. I think it's such a strong trigger mechanism. It's not even fair. It's, to me, a rig will make you a better fisherman. You just got to throw it. That's why I kind of say the outlaw doing so many things, because, it can make somebody a better fisherman. It makes a little bit easier of a, playing field. You still got to find where to throw it, when to throw it, but it can make a good fisherman better. typically around here in Virginia, if somebody says, yeah, they, took 24 pounds of wind down at, Bugs Island or something like that, first instinct is an A-rig. I mean, A-rigs put big fish, big bags in the boat. It's proven many times in, my scenarios, probably versus other people. An A-rig will win tournaments, and it normally wins tournaments by, a large chunk. Another question we're getting in coming here: do you prefer preferences for blades? I go willow. Willow's a little bit smaller. You want to go to the smaller blades on your A-rig. You don't want something too big. It causes that bait to lift. Whenever it starts lifting, you're getting out of the strike zone. Smaller blades still get the same amount of flash, but you don't get the lift as you do in a bigger blade. I think we covered just about anything. Trying to think anything else on the A-rig. Swivel and we did lures, change the direction, braid. I'm always a fan of braid. No stretch. Rod wise, yeah, that's a biggie. Rod wise, 7-Eleven. I get a 7-Eleven fast heavy. I use the Cashin swim bait rod. It's a fast heavy U rod. Works very, very good. It has and one thing with the swim bait rod, I like a longer handle, kind of sticks up underneath you. They run a 13-inch handle on a swim bait rod, so you kind of tucks up underneath you. The rod kind of has a slow parabolic bend to it. That makes a difference, in my opinion. With that, it loads up. It's like throwing a big crankbait. You don't want to pick up a big crankbait and throw it on a flip stick. It don't work too well. You got the same thing with A-rig. I want something with good flex, good tip to it, loads up on a cast. It helps absorb the energy while the bait's traveling through the air. Don't use a flipping stick for throwing an A-rig. I broke 3 flipping sticks when it came out. Fishing a heavy action rod, a flipping stick doesn't have the right flex, the right bend in the rod. So a lot of times you want to break it, just like I did. What braid or fluoro? What pound test? I use 50 pound test, Robert. I have bounced around to fluoro, mono, braid. It doesn't matter. I just go with braid because I can get my rig back. I had two instances where I used 20-pound fluoro one time and 20-pound mono. Well, when I got my baits hung, and I run a medium wire jig heads on the outside. That way, if I get hung, I can straighten them out and still get my, A-rig back. With mono and mono and fluorocarbon, I did not get them back. And that was an expensive day. My opinion, you got 5 thick ass arms on there with a whole bunch of hardware. I don't think they pay attention to braid at all. So I think you're better off going with braid because you can straighten it out. You get a little bit better hook set, digging it in. So that was a good question. We're looking at 903. So I apologize for the technical difficulty. At least I had it up on the presentation on the jerkbaits, but I was hoping my video camera was going to work. It might be my computer, or might just be a little slow on using this software on here for the webinar, but it's like everything else. The more you do it, the better you get at it. But I appreciate y'all showing up and attending my webinar. We'll have another one coming as well. And I will be giving away, like I said, a $25 Green Top gift card, a Hog Farmer A-Rig, and a free Navionics app for those that attended versus those that just registered and never came. So the ones that attended, I'll be picking out 3 lucky winners that will get that. If y'all have any questions, you can email me at T Harris, that's T as in Thomas, HARRIS, at navionics.com. With any questions or concerns, feel free to shoot me an email. I might be a little bit tied up after this webinar, catching up on some of the emails. but I will be able to get back to y'all. So thank you for joining. If you have any questions, like I said, email me, and y'all have a good evening. Thank you.